Okay. I thought I'd be a little dramatic there. Kind of warm up to see what's going on here. Let me turn another light on so you can see a little better. It might be too much. I don't know. Hi, everybody. And, of course, our subject today is about what happened in Las Vegas back on the night of October 1st. And I should be able to see your comments, I believe, without my glasses. At this distance, I have a little bit further back, so I don't need to use my glasses, I don't think. I will say hi to everybody. I probably won't address each of you individually. I'd like to, but just know that I appreciate you coming on board so that we can talk about this. And after we get going, after I get a little bit of information out that I want to cover, then we'll go to the discussion. Basically, I'll read a question, and Brandon Thornton's just on there now, and he says, "Hi, Roy, learning more every day, no doubt about it." And we're going to go through some things here that are pretty important. By the way, Brandon Thornton's an old friend of mine. He and I have been around for, speaking up against both governmental and ecclesiastical tyranny for quite some time, many, many years, 3 decades actually. And sometimes we get a little too smart for our pants, but our intentions are good. So just as long as you understand where we're coming from, I think that's the important part. And I think we've both shown that. And as a matter of fact, everybody here has. Not everybody has an opportunity to go out and actually do things on the ground, and there's nothing wrong with being on YouTube and on Twitter and things like that. But when you get a chance to go do something for real, and as long as you're not going to hurt anybody, that's a good thing, okay? All right, well, let me get started here by saying a few things that I think are kind of important to get out of the way. Again, thank you for coming, everybody. I appreciate it very much. There are some unexpected events that happened here, and so you might hear some background noises, and I apologize for that. But some things just happen, and you can't help it. So it's kind of a long story, but some repairs and things. So at any rate, if you hear some background noise, that's the reason why, and I apologize for it. But one of those things you can't really plan on. You just gotta, on with the show kind of thing. Okay, let's get right into it. This has been a very, very horrible situation. We can go back in time to all the false flags and attacks on our country that have occurred by our own countrymen. But I'm gonna start off, and everybody will know most of this. We'll start off with Operation Northwoods back in the 60s when they wanted to shoot down planes, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Pentagon wanted to do that so that they could have an excuse to go to war with Cuba. The military-industrial complex, we were warned about it by President Eisenhower, and anybody who's had the guts and the willingness to stand up for the truth has done so since then, but most of them have not been in political office. If they have, like Goldwater, they worked around him, and of course they slandered his good name. And there have been other things, of course. The Vietnam War, the Gulf of Tonkin. Then we can go ahead and speed it. There are a lot of things, I'm going to miss a lot of them, but just so that you know that this is not without precedent, what we've seen here in Vegas. Then we had the situation, of course, with the first bombing of the World Trade Centers. This was back in the 90s. The FBI was actually behind that. Gave the guy everything he needed to do. Well, they didn't protect us, did they? No. There are a lot of reasons why they let that go, and people actually got hurt, a lot of property damage. The FBI was in the throes at that time of an internal conflict along with the CIA, which tries to infiltrate everything. I know about that because, of course, my experience. Well, then we can go ahead and we can talk about the situation with the FBI and Randy Weaver in Idaho, which resulted, and basically they were trying to frame him on a weapons charge with the guy who actually saw the shotgun's barrel length just short enough that Randy didn't notice it, but they got him on, you know, a weapons charge for having a shotgun with, you know, too short a length of a barrel. In the end there, they came in force, and they shot his son, his wife, their dog, and their friend. And I forget the friend's name right at the moment. But, you know, it was inexcusable. And I'm going to tell you who did it. Randy Horrifying, whose name will pop up again here in just a couple of minutes. The HRT is not... The HRT, the hostage rescue team, it's a really misnomer. It's kind of like talking about the Patriot Act, or now we have the Liberty Act that's in front of us. You know, all these kinds of things. And you know, it's not about hostage rescue at all, at least not normally. It's normally used as an offensive weapon. There are sections, you know, there are different parts of the HRT. Not everybody's bad, not everybody's like Lon Horrifying, but the FBI doesn't police itself because there's nobody in government it answers to. Apparently, as we found out here in the last little while, not even the President of the United States or the Attorney General. So it just doesn't surprise us that these, and you saw at the beginning, I have my motto on my channel, our most dangerous domestic enemy is the intel community. Absolutely. And it has been for a long time. And we'll get to the formation of the CIA in just a minute, and all of the other intelligence and law enforcement agencies it's brought under its umbrella. Well, I'll just say it now. They've infiltrated everything, every form of government from feds down to locals. And you might wonder, well, how do they do that? Where does the money come from? Well, drugs for one thing, as we know about, but other things too. You know, that whatever it was that hit the Pentagon on 9/11 and took out the area where supposedly Rumsfeld said that we were missing, what was it, $2.3 trillion? Where do you think that money went? That was just to cover so that they can give it to this shadow government. Okay, that's what that's about. So they're only for themselves. They're not for us. They're not out there to protect us. They're out there to protect themselves and to take over everything. That's really what it's about. The CIA was formed by, well, let's stop here and just say this. If you're a Christian, you know that the only time that it's recorded that Jesus used any real violence was in the temple, and it was about the money changers who were the bankers of the day and how they were cheating the people, right? And he got out a whip and he beat them. Okay? Well, guess who started the CIA? Wall Street bankers and lawyers, okay? Not the good guys. Not the good guys. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about a few more of these false flags and these other things that they've done. Again, this is not exhaustive. Okay, so the next thing that we can talk about is the Murrah building. And what happened there, we know that the Southern Poverty Law Center in Elohim City was run by them, and they were intricately involved. And guess who they were attached to? Ta-da, as usual, the FBI, right? Well, there were witnesses there, and there are a lot of people that know a lot more about who these people are than I do, but I can tell you this much, okay? A fertilizer truck bomb did not take out the front end and the concrete pillars of the Murrah building. It's impossible. It wouldn't happen, especially with the distances involved. You would have seen very similar type of destruction on the other side of the street, and of course you didn't. There were people who said that they saw telephone people or whatever in there, and they were putting up little cubes of things that looked like butter, running lines. Well, of course, we know what that was really about. And that, of course, was to get all the terrorism stuff started, and the Second Amendment attacks and that kind of thing, surveillance, everything. All this is about control. And everybody, I think, knows about Hitler and the Reichstag and all of that. Well, the next situation was Waco. They could have arrested David Koresh any day of the week when he was walking outside. But no, they had to make an example of them. They were different people, and they knew if the government bent it just right, they could make them look bad, because people don't check things out for themselves, and we have a tendency not to like somebody who's different from ourselves. And you know, and I hate to point out Christians, but they're a good example. You know, if you don't believe like a particular Christian does, and I'm one, so I'm guilty of this too. You think the person's a pagan or whatever. You got to remember to look into the heart. None of us have it all figured out right, but of course they use that ignorance on our parts to go after the Davidians. And as a result, to save the children from child abuse, which isn't even really the government's responsibility, certainly not the ATF's or Janet Reno's. Somebody should have saved the kids from her. They go in there and they killed all those kids, and I can tell you they did use military munitions in that assault. They absolutely did. And guess who showed up again at that time? Our famous friend Lon Horiuchi. Okay? So then we have 9/11. I'm jumping around a bit, but anybody who studied 9/11 knows that there's no way that those planes brought down those buildings. And I've got some information here that I'm going to share with you. And it'll also have to do with the incident in Las Vegas about different temperatures that are affected, that affect different materials, okay? Because this is important to understand what happened in Vegas. Part of the questions that we need to ask. But I'm going to go back to 9/11 here, and I think everybody knows this by now, okay? I think everybody knows it by now. Steel melts at 2,750 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in there, right? Right? Do you know what jet fuel burns at? I've got it right here. And it depends on the type of jet fuel or aviation fuel, and there are several different types. But here we go. 800 to 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Steel is at 2,750. Crazy. And then there were other anomalies about that we could talk about. But I just want to point out that, you know, it's not what we were told. And of course, most of us who have checked into this know that that's not the case. Some over 2,000, almost 3,000 Americans perished on that day. And I'm not certain they were on the planes when they died, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not sure if those planes were actually loaded with people. I don't know what happened there. I saw the crash site there in Pennsylvania, of course. No airplane parts, no bodies, no nothing. And, of course, the big puzzle was at the Pentagon. And guess who had friends at the Pentagon? Yeah, right? No airplane parts, nothing. It was not an airliner that hit them, of course. And I think we all know that. But again, the point is that close to 3,000 people died there on that day. Americans. Okay, who has the power to cover something up and who benefits? You've always heard those, right? And so that's what's going on here, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and start talking about ISIS and all of that. You know, they wanted to start a war over the 9/11 thing, and they didn't attack Saudi Arabia, even though there were Saudis that were involved, of course, right? Didn't even use any diplomacy on them, at least nothing that we saw, right? No, they want to go to war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Why? Well, if you've studied that since then, it's because of minerals, it's because of the poppy field. CIA and the military are very much into the dealing drugs. Why do you think the opioid epidemic has exploded in the last few years? Why? Because the American military is in Afghanistan protecting the poppy fields, the largest poppy production in the whole world. And the CIA, by the way, the Russians were concerned about that, and there was a problem. The Russians tried to stop that stuff on their border because of CIA and DOD, elements of the military-industrial complex and the intelligence community, using that for funds and taking down countries. Okay, that's all about that. Look what's happened to Mexico. All right, good example. We can go to Fast and Furious and all that. I think you get the point of what I'm talking about here. We have evil people in the government. We're not about setting the example for the world of how to live in peace and to have people rule their own lives. No, we say we're going to export democracy, which we're not anyway. We're a constitutional republic, or at least supposed to be, right? And there are other places in the world that aren't set up for that, okay? But we do it for what reason? For money and for resources and power. Hegemony, okay? And I think everybody knows that. So I'm going over all this, and I don't mean to bore you, but I want to set the stage here. Okay, so they start up ISIS, and we have all these problems in the Middle East. We go after these poor people out there, and I don't like Islam. You know, I studied it very early on, probably 25 years ago. I realized what it was. It's definitely not for me. It's not for most of the people in the Western world. Because it's contrary to our concepts of liberty and that type of thing. Now, there are some good things about it. There always are, because what happens, you're always fed 99 truths to get that one bad thing in there, so you really mess up. And that's the real problem for me with Islam. And I'll talk to, matter of fact, I have talked to Islamic people, and they're usually good folks. At least that's the way they appear to you when they're kind of on the other side, right? But when they get high numbers of people around them, then things happen, and we've seen that in Europe. And this is the invasion of Europe, and they're going to continue doing that in the United States, despite what we're doing here. Okay, so then they started using this terrorist thing, and you know, we have all these other things. We had the Garland shooting, Garland, Texas shooting, which now Pam Geller, she's suing, you know, the federal government, the DOJ in particular, and the FBI, because the FBI refused to stop it. As a matter of fact, they helped orchestrate it again, and then didn't protect anybody. How many times have we heard that story? I did a series here about a year ago, maybe not quite that, called The Corruption of the FBI. It's like 7 videos that I did. It has a picture of Comey on there. You can go back and look at those. It was the beginning of this year, I think, probably around February. And I talk about that. And a lot of that I talk about is historical and current events. But it's also based on my own experience with the FBI, both on a personal basis and a professional, okay? And I know what they're like. Even some agents who are honest with you will tell you about the politicization of the FBI and how it's used. And again, the more the CIA got in there to control it, the more it became counter-American Republic and American people. Okay. So we could talk about all the terrorist things that have gone on and how they've used that for surveillance, you know, to convince us to go with the surveillance state and the police state and taking away, you know, different encroachments on the Second Amendment and all of that. And look what's happened. When we take it up to another level, they go up higher. So I'm going to jump ahead now. We could talk about a lot of other things that happened. You know, the shooting at Fort Hood, the situation in San Bernardino, all these places where they denied that Islam was even a problem until sometimes years later, right? Not saying there aren't white people and Americans in general that can't be a problem, but this is a problem, okay, obviously. Okay, so like I say, we're going to jump ahead and we're going to get to Las Vegas. And this is where we're going to dig in and find out, you know, what we should be talking about. I don't claim to have the answers to what's happened. I worked, of course, as a military police officer in the Army, and I did also military intelligence work. I'm very familiar with intelligence estimates and you know, looking at the enemy and figuring out their capabilities and all of this. It's part of my nature, okay? And yes, I can tell when there are multiple weapons being fired, and I can almost tell you what kind, okay? Yes, I can. All right, so we're going to get to that in just a minute. And we've had some scientific studies to prove exactly what a lot of the vets are saying is the situation. And there are other people that are saying, no, you know, it was just a single shooter. I have a lot of respect, for instance, for Stefan Molyneux. Matter of fact, as I said in an earlier YouTube or Twitter, I don't remember which, I said, you know, yes, Orlando too, Cosmo, that's right. You know, I've been accused of being Stefan Molyneux in disguise. It's kind of funny. Actually, it's kind of flattering because I consider him a fantastic brain, a great philosopher. But he believes that there was just a single shooter. Well, I think it's partly because his experience hasn't really, you know, given him that ability to tell. And, you know, there's a lot of things thrown into this Las Vegas thing that make it so it's difficult for anybody who hasn't had that experience to really figure it out. And that's why we're going to go to some of that today. Okay, so let me say this. I didn't welcome everybody. I'm not sure, you know, how many people we've got on there. It says 128. I don't know. You know, I think all of that's, you know, controlled. So it doesn't really matter. The important thing is that we're out there and we're telling this story. We're revealing things, and I have some pretty important things to reveal to you tonight. Brand Thornton, and Brand, you're listening, and I'll tell you, you know, I did find out, and I think it was about a week ago, that you had found out some things, especially I hope you don't mind me, maybe you can tell me on here if I can tell people your background as far as your HVAC and who you've worked, not who you've worked for, but the type of work you did as an engineer for you know, casino things. If you'll let me do that, I'll wait until I see a response from you before I say much. I won't identify any places. The point is Brand has a lot of contacts. He's been in Vegas most of his life. He knows the place. Okay, he understands a lot. Okay, Brand says absolutely. Okay, Brand, thanks. I appreciate it. One more administrative detail here. As most of you know, I'm still recovering from some things that happened, and I might have to take a break, you know, and if I do, I promise not to be gone more than about a minute or two, and I hope you'll understand, okay? I appreciate that. I kind of took care of things before we started, so hopefully it'll be okay, but just in case, you know, I get surprised here. All right, so let me go on from here. First and foremost, before I say anything else, okay, please do not construe anything that I address here as a denigration or complaint against the many fine line officers on the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department who acted in an absolutely heroic manner and within the confines, unfortunately, of their command structure, but they have to do that. That's kind of the way it is, and you'll understand why I'm saying that here in just a few minutes. Also, I don't want anybody to construe from what I say here that I do not believe that there aren't actual casualties in this, that people weren't killed or wounded. I know for a fact they were. Brand will attest to that as well, okay? I know for a fact that that happened, all right? So I'm going to bring up some things here that'll look like I'm kind of dismissing that. I'm not. I'm going to show you how it's part of the bigger picture, okay? It all has to do with diversions and deceit, okay? As a matter of fact, does anybody know what the motto of the Mossad is? And they're not the only one with this motto, at least, but they just, you know, say that they are. It says, you know, by deceit shalt thou wage war. Okay? Basically, that's what it is in Hebrew. By deceit thou shalt wage war. Deceit's a big thing in all of this, okay? Certainly in the banking industry, it's deceit, right? They never have you read the fine print, right? Or they try to keep you away from that. Okay. So I'm going to say some things. Just wait till we get to the point where you know what I'm saying, and you'll see how this was a tactic that was used, and you'll understand, okay? All right. I have pointed out on my YouTube videos and on Twitter, Periscope a couple times as well, that I have some suspicions of Sheriff Lombardo, and there are some reasons for that. I saw how he acted at Bundy Ranch. I saw how he acted after Bundy Ranch in basically allowing people to be railroaded by the FBI, the BLM, and the DOJ. I know for a fact that there were people that were abused by the BLM, and they made reports to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And as far as I know, Brandon, you might want to help us out here, I don't think they ever followed up on any of those complaints against the BLM officers. There was never, as far as I'm aware, there was never an attempt to investigate the abuses and the crimes committed by the BLM, okay? I don't know of any. I don't think that happened. Not to this day. And although Lombardo was not the sheriff at the time, he was the undersheriff. Yeah, nothing. I didn't think so, Brand. Thank you. Lombardo was the undersheriff, second in command of the entire Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department under, at the time, Sheriff Gillespie. Sheriff Gillespie was part of DHS. He was on their board. And anybody who followed the Bundy situation, you know, the people were exercising their First and Second Amendment rights. They were never intending to do any harm to any of those federal agents. Now, there was a demonstration area several miles away from where the feds were keeping, the BLM were keeping the cows and their compound. And nobody, to my knowledge, went over there except for Pete Santilli to talk to the agent in charge there, Dan Love, who we now know is basically, you know, in a lot of trouble for a lot of things that he's done. Just from the situation with him, a lot of those people should be released now that are being held by the government. But at any rate, when Pete went up there, he asked me to go with him as a witness, and that's what I did. I went up there to witness what was going on. And I tried to talk to Dan Love myself, not in the same way Pete did. It was more of a, since I had been a law enforcement officer, you know, kind of getting a feel for what their position was. But just suffice it to say, I wasn't able to accomplish that. And the rest I'll talk about maybe some other time. I'm not really sure. But at any rate, the point is that there was never any attempt. Pete did say to them, for instance, that you know, if they had done criminal conduct, that Pete was going to make sure that was revealed. There were some people that said that, as a matter of fact, I will not say that, like the government is, that Pete was a front man for the Bundys. I don't believe that. I think he was passionate, but I don't think he was a front man. But anyway, he's out now, and he pled to one charge. But that's another story. I don't want to get locked up into that. What I do want to talk about is Lombardo again. Lombardo didn't investigate before he became sheriff, when he was under sheriff, or after he became sheriff. He let those people go. Those were his constituents, a lot of them. Those were his people that he, as the sheriff of the county, of Grant County, he was supposed to protect, and he failed to do that. As a matter of fact, I have good reason to believe that he was basically encouraged by the FBI and the DOJ, Harry Reid and others. No, Pete is still not in prison. No, he's been released. Sentencing is in January, I believe. But the point is that I have a lot of reasons to believe that Lombardo was manipulated very early on. Okay, so I haven't trusted him since then. And I have some other. Brand might remember some incidents that I had with. I actually tried to get hired on the Las Vegas Police Department many years ago, and some things happened there. Lombardo wasn't directly involved, but Gillespie was. So anyway, I'm very familiar with how the politics in that organization works and what they're really about. They are about not standing up for constitutional principles, for the principles of the republic. Okay, yeah, Harry Reid was involved. All right, so the point is I have a lot of suspicions about Lombardo for the way he handled the case, you know, with the Bundys, and especially with the people that put in the complaints about the abuse by the BLM, which he and the federal government totally ignored. Okay, they watched out for their own. It was the most disgusting display of tyranny and corruption that I have seen in my almost 30 years of career, and I've seen a lot. Okay, I've seen a lot. All right, so then there are some other things that happen as we come up to the Las Vegas thing that confirm my suspicions of Lombardo. Okay, and I just want to make sure that you understand that that's where I'm coming from. This is based on a lot of information. Okay, having said all that, I anticipate, I hope, that Sheriff Lombardo or one of his representatives looks at this video, and I suspect they probably will. And I want to read a couple things. I told a lot of people the other day, I think it was yesterday, that I have a special message, a special information for Sheriff Lombardo. And this is going to be it. I don't believe he's a lost soul. I think he's scared right now. I think he knows he's put his cookies in the wrong basket, but he doesn't know how to extricate himself. Sheriff, this is where you have to be courageous and you have to do the right thing. And I'm not the only person that's told you this, okay? But I'm going to read something from the Bible, okay? Surprise that. I suspect that this is one of your books of faith, one of them, okay? And I want to read this. It's in Ephesians 6:12. All right, this is a warning. And I'm sure you'll recognize it when you hear it, okay? But a lot of times we just don't take these things to ourselves. We don't apply them to ourselves and how we're supposed to deal with it. This is what it says, and a lot of people are going to know what I'm reading here because you're really good, okay? Verse 12 in chapter 6. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And where are those high places, Sheriff Lombardo? The CIA, the FBI, these intelligence communities that have corrupted our society. And if you haven't looked into it, you should have by now. Now there's another book that you hold in a lot of high esteem, all right, that I'm aware of. And I'm not going to quote it here. I'm not going to spout it out about what it is. A lot of people will figure it out. but I want to tell you that you need to go to that other book in your standard works, okay? The Bible and now this other book, the longer one, all right? Not the shorter ones, but the longer one, all right? You know this, and you must act correctly because you're on the chopping block. Do you realize that? God's holding you in the balance. You ever heard of Mene, Tekel, Upharsin? Go look it up. It's the thing that says you have been weighed and found wanting in the balance. You've been weighed in the balance and found wanting. You remember that? You remember that? Well, this is happening to you right now, Sheriff Lombardo. You're the guy on the front seat here, and you have to take the right stand or your soul's going to be lost. It just is. All right? In this second book that you hold into some regard, I want you to go, and I'm going to give you page numbers and verses. I'm not going to say the book or the chapters or anything like that. I want you to go to page 492. Start at verse 18 and read through page 493 to page 26. I'm going to repeat that. Start at page 492, verse 18, and read through to page 493, verse 26. All right? It's not alcohol companies. It's not tobacco companies. You know, it's not even most corporations, although now, of course, with the New World Order and, you know, all the stuff that's going on with this, you know, the globalization, it is becoming that. But Sheriff Lombardo, I'll tell you what it's talking about. When you go back and read that, it's talking about the type of thing that the CIA is, what the FBI has become, etc., etc. The people that you are serving, Sheriff Clark, who aren't your constituents, who aren't the people that put you in office, who depended on you to protect them from all enemies, foreign and domestic, you have failed, Sheriff Lombardo. You have failed. And I'm going to point out some other things that you failed in tonight. I'm going to talk about them tonight, the things that you've done. So you better go read those things because you are many Tekel Upharsin. Okay, that's you. Boy, I don't know many people that are in that kind of a situation right now, but you definitely are. Okay, let's move on here now. I want to make sure that you understand that this is not meant to be an exhaustive analysis. We're already over a half an hour into this because I'm so verbose, okay? We've got some good stuff for you, but I just need to get some of this out of the way. It's not an exhaustive analysis. None of us know all the answers, okay? I'm looking at it. I don't even have the ability to get the intelligence stuff that's going on within the federal government or even the sheriff's office. I have to put this together because of other things that I've learned from my experiences in the military and the police department. It's called, again, the intelligence estimate. Our purpose here is to concentrate on inconsistencies and omissions in the official narrative, to show the likely methodology and operation of the attack, identify the controllers and who benefits, and the obvious end game. I don't think anybody doubts what the end game is. If you don't have a clue, well, you're really out in outer space. I mean, this stuff should be written all over everybody's hearts and minds now. The concerns about what our government and the globalists are trying to do to us. Okay, once I have this uploaded, once the live stream is done today, you know, it takes a little while to process. And what I have is a bunch of links that I'm going to put in the description box, and this won't happen until later tonight, but you can go back and you can look and see the links that I'm going to show you in the description box, where a lot of what I'm talking about has already been talked about, you know, on a lot of places. Again, Stefan Molyneux, Brand, I have some of Brand's things from his YouTube channel on there, eyewitness accounts, different things, of course, with the automatic weapons fire and some other stuff, all kinds of things. I think I have like 12 things or something that I'm going to put in the description box. So, but it won't be until after the video actually gets processed and up. Okay, and so probably a half hour after that or something like that. Just so you know. Again, it's not an exhaustive list. There's no way to make an exhaustive list of all this. It's just too much. You know, when you have the resources of the FBI and the sheriff, they can do that despite what they've said. And again, I'm going to talk about some of that where they say that, you know, that all these things are, this is such a massive investigation, we don't know. There are some things that are rock solid. Radio communications are rock solid, you know. There's no way to get around that. They don't call them blotters anymore. Back in my day, they called them blotters. Today, that has a whole other connotation. But basically, the log tells a lot of things that are going on, and there's no reason for Lombardo not to know what those are. Okay, there just isn't any reason. And his excuse is that things are changing. It's because somebody else is making them change. I don't think he's doing it, but I think he's looking the other way, just like he does in his interviews now, his press conferences. You notice he doesn't ever look at Rouse. I wouldn't either. Rouse is a demon. I'll just put it that way. Okay, literally. All right. Okay. Okay. I think we're at a point now where we can start talking about the incident. All right. So let's do that. And this isn't going to be an in-depth piece by piece. It's some things that are important. Okay. We found out from Brand he has contacts in the different casinos because he has been an engineer for casinos, and he's been in Vegas a long time. He knows a lot of people, okay? And the first thing I want you to know is that he has found out that the FBI was on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay a full week before the incident. Now, some people say, oh, the FBI, you know, they're doing stuff all the time. You know, they've got conferences, and they're doing this, and they're doing that. On the 32nd floor. Okay, if they were there, why didn't they do anything when the shooting started? Or did they? Maybe not what they were supposed to be doing, at least not what we would think that they're supposed to be doing. That's an important piece of information. Further, apparently the FBI treated them the same way that they did the festival goers who were witnesses and handed over their electronic devices, and the FBI wiped them clean. Now, you could say that's protecting the elements of the investigation, the evidence. Really? Well, I call it a cover-up. Okay? I have taken evidence before, and I don't need to wipe any evidence. I don't need to wipe a person's phone clean. Okay? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Okay. So that's important to know. We can talk about who Paddock really is. Tracy Beanz, who is on Twitter and on YouTube, did a very fine job talking about the picture of the person, supposedly the shooter, Paddock, after he had been killed in the apartment, in the room, the suite, in the hotel. And you know, I've seen a lot of crime scenes, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen a lot of people shot. I've seen a lot, okay? And I'll tell you, I don't care what those sheriff's deputies said. That place was odd. Odd for what they claimed happened in there. Not just the fact that he was shooting out the windows, but down the hallway. Do you know how much damage that would cause? By the way, 200 rounds to supposedly hit a security guard one time? Are you kidding me? Who wrote this scenario? Who wrote it? If the FBI was there, like Brand says, why weren't they there during the incident? Is it maybe because they didn't want to get shot by their patsy? Yeah. Convenient that there were no ATF in the building, in the Murat building when it blew up, right? And on the day of 9/11, no less a person than Al Franken, who is now a senator, was called. You can see this in his book, Lies, Liars, and the Lying Liars That Tell the Lies, or whatever that is. I forget the name of the book. He admitted he got a call in the morning not to go to work because something was going to happen. Al Franken. And now he's a senator for keeping his mouth shut. Traitor. Murderer as an accessory. Same with the ATF agents at the Murat building. And I'm saying same thing with the FBI and the CIA in the Mandalay Bay. Okay. By the way, can an HRT saddle up and be there within an hour? Probably. You know, the HRT, it takes some time, the hostage rescue team. It takes some time, you know, to get ready. They do have local people that they can call on. And there's an FBI office right there in Vegas, possibly. But we're going to talk about the response to this room. So back on Paddock. That room, I'll tell you what it does, and I'm not going to go into the details. I mean, we can get locked into too many things here. I'm just pointing out some things that are really important. I am convinced that Tracy Beanz is correct, that body is not the Paddock that we've been shown as the Stephen Paddock in all of the photographs about him. Remember him holding, his eyes are closed and he's holding the glass, and his girlfriend has his arm? Well, there's a guy by the name of Gavin Syme, Brand knows him as a matter of fact, who is a graphic artist, a photographer, some other things, and he has shown that photograph of him with his eyes closed holding the cup has been altered. Okay. But the thing that Tracy Beanz pointed out, and she's absolutely 100% correct, when you look at the guy supposedly Paddock laying on the floor, and you compare him with the other photographs, no, it's not the same guy. A lot of things in the skeletal structure are different. Some other things, a lot of people were talking about the tattoo of the 13 on his neck. That could have been a temporary, I'm not even looking at that. One of the telltale things, the earlobes. Paddock's, the one he's shown holding the glass, and all the other photographs, his earlobes are attached. They don't hang down. But the guy laying there on the floor has a detached earlobe, both sides. It's not the same guy. All right? A lot of possibilities there. A lot of possibilities. Okay. We've got that much. Now, why all the weapons? Okay, if you're planning on committing this hideous crime, right? Weapons can be a problem. Now, I heard, I won't mention who they are, but I'll just say it, okay? They'll know who they are. Said, oh, he needed that many weapons because when you fire with a bump stock on these different civilian arms that are only semi-automatic, they heat up, they can jam, and so he wanted plenty of arms so that he could, you know, get up another one and keep the firing going. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Did he keep the firing up? No. No, he didn't. Yeah, they can jam. Yeah, they can get hot. Matter of fact, they can get so hot that they can even cook off, if any of you know what that means. All right? He didn't have all those weapons up there to help him to accomplish this hideous crime. There's something going on there. I'm not prepared to say it was a weapons deal gone bad. I'm not saying that. But it certainly is being used, of course, to say that the Second Amendment's bad and that we shouldn't have more than one gun, right? I mean, it's at least being used for that. Correct? Okay, the next thing about the ISIS. Is ISIS involved? Well, who formed ISIS, ladies and gentlemen? Where did they come from? We're back to the CIA, right? We're back to the CIA, their influence in the FBI. So they could have told ISIS to take responsibility for it, even if they didn't have anything to do with Paddock. Or, in fact, they could have radicalized him. Either way, okay, it's still going to accomplish the same purpose. And I'm not going to go in too much detail on that. My own personal opinion is that, again, the guy that's laying on the floor there isn't the actual shooter. I don't believe that. And if he was, there are some other problems, okay? ISIS could be involved, but it doesn't need to be in order for this operation to go forward. You know, notice how the FBI, not even 48 hours into the investigation, Rouse gets up there and says, oh, we've already, you know, discounted the fact that ISIS could be involved. I'm going to tell you something, okay? In an investigation of any kind, nothing is solved that quickly. Nothing. And you never say it is at all unless you have an agenda, okay? Because other information is coming in, okay? You never close down one little aspect, especially one that important on an investigation. You don't do it, So that's a warning sign right there. Rouse, by the way, was a Comey appointee, or he was appointed to the counterintelligence deal. His purpose, according to other people who've looked into it, I have not. I've only looked at it on the surface, but apparently he was used to help to take out any possibility of ISIS being mentioned in the investigations. In other words, he's a cover for Islamic terror. Okay, there we go, Lombardo. And you probably know this better than any of us, and you need to go back and read those things I told you to read. Okay, so now we've got to that point. Haven't even gotten to the shooting yet, right? Well, let's do that. I've looked at an awful lot of videos. You know, this has been 2 weeks. It's crazy, all the stuff that I've looked at. Why have I spent so much time at it? Because there's so many other things happening in the world. I understand, you know, the thing with North Korea. I understand the thing with Iran. I understand the thing with Afghanistan. I understand the drug problem. I understand, you know, what's happening in South America. I understand what's happening here. But I think that this event is a linchpin, and I've used that phrase on a lot of things before. But this one's critical. This one's really, really critical for a lot of reasons. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of them tonight. Okay, so the story goes that, you know, he was setting up, he had, you know, get this. Has anybody thought of this? You have a cart out in the hallway that they bring, you know, food and stuff on, and they left it there, and he put cameras on it to watch. Has anybody ever stayed in a hotel? Do you know how often they come up there and they clean and stuff like that? You think they're going to leave a full tray with cameras on it out in the hallway? Has anybody wondered about that? You know, supposedly he fastened with a screw gun, with a drill, the stairwell there, so that nobody could come in and out. How long did it take him to figure that one out? Are there operatives in the Mandalay? Or were they staying away from there because the FBI told them to? Convenient, isn't it? Okay. So he sets up these cameras and all that supposedly, and then he takes out the windows. Well, that's interesting. Boy, that did, I mean, can you imagine the noise that made? I don't know how he did it. They show a hammer there, what, he busted it out. Have you ever tried to break a window there? Those kinds of plate glass windows, it's not easy. Let's say he did it, you know, fell 32 stories and nobody noticed. Or he kept the glass from falling out, you know, who knows. A lot of these things we don't have any information on. But the point is then if you look at all of the videos, what do you see? What do you hear? Well, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to point out a few things. First of all, the first rounds that we hear being fired are single shots. Now, people have said, well, those are to test the range or whatever. The FBI and Lombardo said that the first couple of shots were at the fuel tanks. I don't buy that. Okay, I don't buy it for a lot of reasons, and we're going to talk about that. I've mentioned it on Periscope to some extent and here, but we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. So the first few shots are single shots, all right? And then the people realize, because they see people falling now, right? Things are happening, they start running, and then the automatic fire starts. And there's a lot of it. And it sounds like it goes and then stops for a little while, and then goes and then stops, whatever. The point is that with trained ears and now verified, all right, with like Mike Adams' forensic acoustic analysis, and there's a new one up which I'll put in the description box as well. They can verify that there are at least 2 separate weapons firing at the same time on multiple occasions. Okay, I could hear that, and I said it up front, even though Stefan Molyneux doesn't think so, and some other people. Paul Joseph Watson, for instance, you know, at least up till a few days ago, thought there was a single shooter. There's definitely multiple shooters firing at the same time and from different locations. Absolutely. They're not echoes. Oh, there are echoes in there, certainly. But I know the difference between an echo and a weapon going off, okay? There is a distinct difference. Okay. So he fires into the crowd. He takes out a few people. Supposedly has already shot at the fuel tanks. Well, has anybody ever seen Jack Reacher, the first one? And I only bring that up because at the beginning of the movie, something happens. There's a sniper involved here, and he shoots like 6 people. But he was really after one target. But he shot 6 people so that it wasn't absolutely obvious who the target was. You see what I'm saying? There's a real good possibility that this thing has multiple levels of operations. Not only did they want to go after the Second Amendment to do this whole thing with the police state, make people afraid, all of that, go after Trump supporters, go after Christians, gun owners, that kind of thing. But I think there was a target there. I don't know who it was. The police said that they found the note and that it had information that they thought might be ballistics information. Now, there's a possibility there were some AK-47s, I don't know, but that's a 7.62 by 39 Russian. It basically has the same ballistics as a 30-30, if you people know what I'm talking about. The ones we're going to concentrate on, though, are 308s and 223s. Those are NATO cartridges. The 308 is a 7.62 NATO round, 30 caliber, and the 223 is basically the 5.56 NATO cartridge that's used in the M16. All right? Let me tell you a little bit about the ballistics. Brand, help me out here, okay? If you look at the ballistics tables, a 223 is faster than a 308 by a substantial amount. But the 308's heavier as it's going through the air, and it maintains its velocity for a little longer. The point is that between 250 and, say, 400 yards, even 500, the drop, depending upon some factors, but it's on the average only about 6 inches at those ranges, give or take a few inches, okay? When you want to shoot a single target long range, and you have a particular person you want to take out, you want to make sure you hit them, you're going to be concerned about minute of angle, okay? About bullet drop, about elevation, about wind speed, about, whether you're at full value or not. If people who've been sniping know what I'm talking about. But the point is wind direction. At that range, you're at 400 yards, you're not concerned about earth rotation or anything like that, okay? Not even temperature differences normally. Okay, but that's if you're trying to hit one target. Those first few shots were single. Wow. Think about that. And then, think about this. You're going to spray a crowd from 400 yards away, right? Okay. The drop's only going to be about 5 to 6 inches. You don't have to be concerned with it. You just adjust. John Wayne used to call it windage and elevation, windage and elevation. Okay, it's not a big deal, especially when you're spraying and you're using bump stocks, which affect the accuracy, and you're using a weapon that's multiple fire, so you adjust anyway. The point is that it's absurd to say that he was 7.62 by 39 is the Russian round. So it's absurd to say that he was using it for range information. Yet we have to address the fuel tanks, because the fuel tanks were hit by somebody, okay? The FBI made sure they took pictures of it. Have any of you seen it? There are 2 rounds that hit it. One kind of in the center of one of the fuel tanks, and the other one kind of near the top. They say they were 223 rounds. There's no way that a 223 is going to penetrate 1.5 inch to 3/8 inch. That's as the tank goes up on these aviation fuel tanks, the thickness changes a little bit, okay? It doesn't have to, but in most designs it does. The point is that a 223 is not going to penetrate that, especially not, ladies and gentlemen, at 600 yards. Not even an armor-piercing 223 round is going to do that. No way. Incendiary? Okay. Could it have been 308 rounds? Maybe, but that's not what they're saying. But even a 308, there's some problems, okay? And I'm going to talk about those real quick. Because why did they shoot at the fuel tanks? Well, I'm going to look at it from a military point of view, okay, about an operation, which I believe this whole thing was. I believe this was a paramilitary operation, and it was very large. 223 won't penetrate that. It's 10 gauge steel, 1.5 to 3/8 inches. And that's what I got off the internet as far as the range, okay? As far as the different types of steel used in these aviation tanks. But there's another problem. Aviation fuel. What did I say at the beginning of this as far as igniting aviation fuel? Did the shooter that was shooting at those tanks think that they were going to explode? Let's look at it. Aviation fuel ignites between 800 and 1500 degrees Fahrenheit as it burns. Okay? But inside the tank, the only place you're really worried about ignition is in the vapor at the top. And there are vents for that. What is the temperature of a tracer round? It's between 572 and 1652 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's when it comes out of the barrel, depending upon the type that it is. It's going down range, it's burning. And it'll take 600 yards. It's probably going to take maybe a second, all right, to get that far. But the burning rate, they're made to burn till about 800 yards out, all right? A 223 isn't going to make it through that tank. Okay, it's not going to do it. If it was a 308 and let's say it did penetrate, what would the reaction be? Aviation fuel will smother it. Oh yeah, it might start a little local fire there, but it won't be hot enough to keep it going. Unless they hit up where apparently the second round, I'm not sure which one was first and second, but up near the top of that tank where it would have possibly ignited that tank. But would it have blown up like a bomb? No. It wouldn't have done that. They would have had a hell of a fire, but it's not going to blow up. What is my point here? I mean, if you shoot one of those things with a grenade launcher that, you can actually, a tank firing a round, an armored tank like an Abrams, and you fire into those, yeah, they'll probably blow up then, but not with a 308, and certainly not with a 223. So what's going on here? I'll tell you what I think, okay? And people say, oh boy, why conjecture? Because I'm looking at this from a military standpoint. If the person who fired those rounds at the tank really thought that it was going to cause a problem and they wanted to shoot the crowd, this isn't going to be a diversion that assists them in accomplishing their purposes. Why? Because as soon as those things blow or a fire starts or whatever, people are going to, react to that. If you have a target that's down there, and this is different than if you're raiding, say, a campsite of other soldiers, a bivouac area or something or whatever. You might have a diversion so that you can bring forces in the other way. It's called an avenue of approach. Diversion so that you can come in from another side. But if you're after one person, anybody out there been hunting? I know Brand has. What's the best way to shoot an animal? They don't know you're there, right? The round hits them before they realize that they're the target and they're out, right? If this had been a professional, which, the FBI says that, he was some great sniper, yeah, really. This guy, Paddock, no, he was not an experienced sniper for a lot of reasons, and I can tell you a lot of reasons why that's not the case. But who started this thing, they shot, whoever the first or second person that was shot on that fairgrounds, that was the initial target. And then they were going to use the tanks, of course, as a diversion after that. But not the first shot. That first one or two shots, they were after somebody down on that ground. I'm almost certain of it. But regardless of any of that, yeah, Paddock was not a sniper. No, he wasn't. I mean, just the setup of the room proved that. His choice of equipment proved that. All right? I mean, obviously. Okay. So the point is that the tanks are a diversion either way. To make us think that there's something else going on here, because I don't believe that anybody who understands anything about ballistics is going to shoot at this type of a structure 600 yards away. I think it's actually 660 from the Mandalay. Now, could the second shooter have done that? No. And I'll tell you why. Because that triangulation of that second shooter was important to this whole thing being carried out, and he didn't want to give his position away. In the Mandalay Bay, there was already, I can guarantee it, there was already an escape plan, and the real people got away. There was a rally point somewhere else where they could meet. They could leave all the weapons in the room. The delay of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, which I'm going to attack Lombardo for here in just a minute, not the line officers, but the delay in getting up there and attacking that room gave them a chance to get away. However they did it. All right. So we have the shooting. A lot of witnesses said that they were sure there were multiple shooters, and I'm very much aware of echoes. I'm very much aware of, ricochets. I'm very much aware of people not knowing where to run because they see people falling over here. They run this way, and they see people falling over there, and they assume that there are people there with guns shooting them when necessarily that's not the case. Now we get into another problem, and this is it here. Back in August, around the 15th, I had a lady who sent me some information about an advertisement in Craigslist in Las Vegas, okay, for crisis actors. Okay, well, there are people using actors all over the place, and probably particularly in Las Vegas. I don't have definitive evidence to know who put that there or what it was for. But we have a copy of it, and it's on my YouTube channel. It's one of the last 3 or 4 videos, 5 maybe, whatever. This is what I think, okay? This was a large operation. There was a paramilitary group, but diversions in these types of situations are absolutely important. So I think that there was a mixture of real weapons fire with crisis actors in other locations. Let me give you an example. If you look through a lot of the videos, one of them is about victims being brought into a hospital, into an ER. Dr. Pachinik made this point, as have some other people, and thought that this was, event-wide. It wasn't. But this causes confusion. It's a diversion. It's a straw man. There's a lot of stuff that can happen on this that they can use it to their advantage, because who's in control of the narrative? Are you in control of the narrative? Am I? Not even Sheriff Lombardo is in control of this narrative. The CIA and the FBI are. All right, let's get back to it. So there's this video of these victims brought in. Not one of them is showing signs of any trauma. There's no blood. There's no sense of urgency in this supposed ER room. I mean, zero. We're not supposed to use that symbol, right? It's not PC. That's another thing about our country. We're sick. But at any rate, so what am I saying? There was the shooting at the Bellagio, supposedly. Tracy Beanz brought that up, and nothing against Tracy. She's a great investigative reporter. And even the people that reported it, the husband and wife that were doing that. And there have been other people, okay? But I'm not certain that anything actually happened, as far as real shots being fired at the Bellagio. It doesn't have to. The hysteria, and I'm not just talking about the shooting that was happening at Mandalay Bay, that's almost, what, 1.5 miles, 2 miles south of the Bellagio? Something like that. But this was well after the shooting stopped. This was like around 2300 hours, okay? That's 11 o'clock for the rest of you. A lot of people, the information had, gone back and forth. There were a lot of people that, the car could have backfired and it could have scared somebody. I am not saying that there weren't incidents elsewhere in the city, because I do believe there were, okay? But these crisis actors may have been used like the day before in an exercise. As a matter of fact, we found evidence that they were doing exercises in the hotels the day before, probably had videotape. How do we know that the FBI, the CIA didn't use some of those to add to the confusion and to make the diversions. Then you say, oh, well, you know, look at this. You know, these people aren't even shot. Oh, well, that was an exercise we did before. But if nobody asks that question, they put it up there and they, oh, look how horrible this is, all these people. Do you see the chaos and the confusion that you do here? So what I'm saying is, this was a very large operation. They had paramilitary actually doing shooting, actually killing and wounding people. And they had this crisis actor thing, whether the people realized it or not, the actors. Then they put it all into the mix so that, you know, you don't know what to think. You don't know where to go. That shows that this was a very sophisticated operation. Okay? Again, I'm not saying that, you know, all of those scenes in the hospitals or whatever weren't some of the victims, but I'm certain that some of them were not, and the actors were used. Will we ever find out who these actors were? Have you ever seen the agreements that you sign when you become one of these people? We'll probably never hear from them. Not because they're dead, but because they don't want to get in trouble, lose their money, whatever. People don't have that kind of courage, okay? Especially if they think they've signed a contract that says they can't talk about it or whatever. Sophisticated all across the board. So Paddock does the shooting, or whoever it was. Now we get to the assault on the hotel, on the Mandalay Bay. The other shooters have already taken off. Okay, they've, you know. Oh, by the way, the helicopter. For anybody who thinks that there was a helicopter shooting at people or a drone, I highly doubt it. The pictures I've seen of that helicopter, it looks like an external camera to me, taking a lot of photographs using a very bright flash. Plus, its location doesn't really lend itself to this incident. I could have been observing it. We have a flight plan where it was flying around, but let me tell you a little bit about that, because Mike Adams said, of course, if you looked at the forensic analysis of the acoustic forensic analysis, all of the shots came from no further than about 450 yards away. The second shooter that you can hear was about 250 to 300 yards away. Okay, so he verified there were those two shooters using the forensic system to determine that. Okay, the helicopter would have been out of that range. The one that we see in the video, it would have been out of that range. If it had been firing on the crowd, we would have been able to pick that up. So I don't think that's what that helicopter is. And then we go to a drone. You have a drone carrying a weapon like that, man, I don't know. That'd be kind of tough. Let's say they could do it. I think there would be a lot of reports of that because of the muzzle flash, and most importantly, the brass that thing would be spitting out. Somebody down there is going to get hit by a piece of brass. I don't think that happened. Okay. Shooters on the ground, I mean, inside the festival, I'm not convinced of that, but I am convinced that there was at least one other shooter outside of the festival shooting into it. I am certain of that, and Mike Adams goes into that. Perfect triangulation, okay, from the hotel. You know, if this is the area here, you have crossing fire coming in this way. Very, very likely. And the FBI, the agents out there collecting the evidence, they're going to see this on the ground. You think they're going to tell you about it? No, because they're going to be told, the good ones, this is national security, you know, you can't talk about it, right? Isn't that what they always use, national security? Okay, so we could go back now to Jesus Campo, right? The security guard who's disappeared. I think I think this was part of the whole deal. I'm not accusing him of being a terrorist. I'm not accusing him of anything. He may not have known. He may have been an FBI informant, an FBI agent. I don't know. But his disappearance is kind of odd, isn't it? But here's the thing. There's that question about when he was shot, either before the shooting began or after it had started and that he interrupted it. Well, it's looking like it was closer to before the shooting started, okay? Let's just say that he's shot and he's got a radio. He should have a radio, right? There is a radio log that's going to say when he called in, and they could certainly get it electronically. Then you have the second maintenance guy that comes up there to check the door, right? Same situation. You still have that situation there. They could radio down. The line officers on the LVMPD were raring to go. Even though they were going to put their lives in danger, they could have walked into an ambush, they could have hit a Claymore mine, who knows what was up there. But there were a group of officers, God bless them, and all of the officers that were doing their job this night. They were ready to go. They put a team together and they were on their way up, even before SWAT arrived. They were ready to jump into the fire, risk their lives to keep this killing from continuing. I heard one officer on the radio say, "We have to get this shooter now. We can't even worry about the wounded because there are going to be more people wounded and killed if we don't do this right now." If you're working at, and this is where the training comes in, that officer knew more than Sheriff Lombardo did. Or whoever the watch commander was at the time, but Lombardo would have been certainly in the decision-making chain. And this is where I have a problem with him on this. And I know his training. You have an active shooter situation. It's not a hostage situation. When you have hostages and you want to negotiate, yeah, you want to lengthen out the time. You want those hostages and the hostage takers to interact. You want to prolong this for as long as you can until they start killing somebody. Then the rules change. This is not a hostage situation. Speed and proper tactics were absolutely necessary. What were the proper tactics? To get up there and take that shooter out. Why did it take over an hour? Why? Because somebody was holding them back. I'm not sure Lombardo would have done it, but he agreed to it. Okay? So I have a problem with him and his tactical response to this. And I can tell you many times in the military, when you're being fired on, you have to act instantaneously. And that was the situation here. What if there had been a bomb up there to set off when those officers got up there? All right, yeah. Well, that's why they wear a badge and a gun. And some officers are going to say, "Oh, whoa, wait a minute, Our safety comes before anybody else's. Then don't wear a badge and a gun." Okay? I was one, I know. If your safety is more important, you've got to be able to protect your weapon. You've got to be able to, react. But if you're saying that your safety is more important than the people you're supposed to protect, that's a fallacy, and it also goes against all the laws of the use of force continuum, which I don't even know if they teach anymore. It sounds like to me it's shoot first and ask questions later, but that's another subject entirely. Okay, I think that there were people inside the hotel who were helping this out, be they FBI agents or whomever. Okay, I think they were inside the hotel helping out. Again, large-scale operation. All right, so we've already talked about when the officers got in there, and we're not even sure who actually went in, because the deputies aren't going to say exactly what happened. If they were told to be hushed about certain things, they're going to cooperate, unfortunately. I'm not sure that the interviews that they had, was it the emergency door had been jammed open, it leads to the stairwell. Yes, that's right. Okay, I could take a lot of time on this and continue to go, but let's go here, because I think this is an important thing to look at. Does anybody remember back a few years ago when they started talking about all of this? And there's the Bundy situation, of course, the whole and I think this ties in, okay, in a lot of ways. The federal government taking over land, chasing people out, claiming endangered tortoises, claiming whatever. There are other ways to handle things than brute force, okay? Especially in a situation like at Bundy Ranch. There were a lot of things they could have done, but they wanted to, like at Waco, they wanted to have this show of force to show what they can do, to frighten people into submission. But there's another thing, and it's financial. I'm just going to ask if, and he'll know who it is. He said he was going to be here tonight. There is a friend of mine on Twitter who is a former law enforcement officer in white-collar crime and financial crime, and in doing investigations into that. He was actually the same one that brought up the fact that he thought, he was thinking about it at the same time I did, but he actually brought it up to me about the possibility that those first few shots were to take out a specific target. And then also he brought up something else. He said, is there any possibility there could be a financial thing going on here as well? And what I'm going to tell you is that this is a multifaceted thing. This has many objectives, many intermediate objectives, and with the final objective of control and power. Okay, no doubt about it. Taking away the guns, all that stuff, yes, of course. But there is this other deal, and he hit on the financial thing. And this is a big one, I think. A few years ago, this whole thing about digital currency came up, right? And a lot of people want it. You know, certainly the banks do. Certainly the government does, because they can keep track of everybody in the New World Order, the globalists, all of that. You know, more control. What was the industry that kind of pushed back on that? You remember? The casino industry. It would cause them a lot of difficulties. You can imagine. They pushed back on it. The CEO of MGM Mandalay sold his stocks in the company, a large number of them. Do you remember seeing that? You remember seeing that? Why? Could this operation, again, it has multiple purposes. Could this operation also be to tell the casino industries, you're not in control anymore, you're going to do what we're telling you, okay? Let me read you something, and you can go look it up online. This is from I think it's an online magazine. It's called CoinDesk. Any of you ever heard of it? It's an investment magazine, especially about bitcoins and things like that. Listen to this, okay? You can go look it up. Again, it's called CoinDesk. And they're interviewing a guy by the name of A.G. Burnett. Brand might know him. Who's chairman of the Nevada Gaming Control Board. Listen to this. Quote, because of heavy regulation and a desire among the gaming industry and its regulators to protect the industry's slowly improving public image. He's going to refer to Bitcoin, but there's also all these other digital currencies that the banks want to do, not just Bitcoin. Okay, and you'll see that in a minute. Bitcoin appears to be years away from earning approval for use in either physical or online casinos in the U.S. We have looked at digital currencies. Again, we're not just talking about Bitcoin now. This is the government thing that they want to institute in the banking systems, the Federal Reserve, all that. We have looked at digital currencies and do not find them appropriate for use in casino gaming at this time. A.G. Burnett, chairman of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, told CoinDesk. As Nevada is by far the country's largest gambling market, gee, now we have the gambling market, casinos, we have the land issues in Nevada. Do you see how this is forming up here? Its regulators have an outsized influence on policy making nationwide. Let me read that again. As Nevada is by far the country's largest gambling market, its regulators have an outsized influence on policy making nationwide. What's he saying? We don't want the digital currencies. What's going to make them change their mind? Why did the CEO of MGM Mandalay sell his stock? Let me keep reading. Burnett continued. I think for us to consider allowing operators to use digital currency in gaming operations, there would have to be a high level of demand amongst the operators, and they don't want it. Coupled with the clear demonstration of the safety and accountability that regulators could utilize in their duties. Asked why he maintains this position, Burnett stressed that the U.S. dollar remains the backbone of Nevada's regulatory apparatus, and that any rethink of that must meet a high standard of merit. They're not willing to give up the control, ladies and gentlemen. until now. Our regulations and statutes are all based on monetary units that are standard, such as the US dollar. In fact, I think most of our regulatory foundation, from audit to enforcement and accounting standards, are all based upon normal US currency being used in a gaming operation. Now, yes, digital currency in a dollar could do that. But, gee, just here in the last few days, what did we hear about China and Russia and, going to the yuan to exchange oil? What's going to happen to the petrodollar? You see all this starting to come in? Keep reading. The other major issue facing casinos that digital currencies could potentially remedy is that they are heavily dependent on cash compared to other industries. Did you hear that? He's doing a little slip curve here. He's explaining some stuff to you. Let me read that again. The other major issue facing casinos that digital currencies could potentially remedy is that they are heavily dependent on cash compared to other industries. Some experts estimate as much as 95% of casino floor transactions are conducted in cash. This has become problematic in recent years as federal law enforcement agencies led by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network have begun putting pressure on casinos. Why? Because they said they don't want to do this digital stuff, which offer banking type services like lines of credit and are regulated under the Bank Secrecy Act to tighten up their what? Anti-money laundering efforts. What is everybody accusing Paddock of? That he was laundering money? You think he really made a living gambling? Hell no. Everything is set up, folks. Everything is set up. The casinos are going to be taken down. They're either going to have to switch to digital currencies or they're going to go away. Just like the ranchers in Nevada did. Many of them. In warfare, the principles of war, of tactics and strategy are pretty much the same, whether you're talking about battlefields where you're actually shooting, or intelligence operations, types of propaganda, all of these things. For instance, there's a principle of war called mass. And if you're attacking an objective, you might have different avenues of approach. You might do feints. Those are things like fake attacks to find out the strength of the enemy, that kind of thing. But when it comes, you use mass. You might have a main effort where you push most of your mass and you try to keep that secret, which they're trying to do to us. They're trying to keep secret what their actual main event, their main effort is, their main objective and the main effort to get it there. They're doing the same thing with all the information they flood us with. Everything, all these things that happen every day, sometimes 3 and 4 times a day. You can't even get off of one subject before they're hitting you with another one, right? That's not an accident. And it's even talked about in Scripture. And it's not just because we have more commo available to us today. These people are actually doing this. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars and natural disasters and all these things will be happening when nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. It'll come so fast and furious that you can't process it. You can't solve this problem before you're hit with another one. They're doing it on purpose. It's their playbook. I did it in the military. Okay? Same thing. Okay. Let's see where we are here. We've already talked about the CIA and the intel community creating ISIS. This is critical to hide deep state operations, confuse the public. ISIS may or may not have actually had any real part in this attack. ISIS is controlled by the CIA, so the CIA could command their ISIS counterparts to say anything they need them to say for the scenario. Or if they're involved, to say they're not. You see? I mean, either way you go, they figured out how to handle this. In summary, this has all the characteristics of a well-planned military operation by a group, not an individual, with obvious assistance, at the minimum, assistance from official government organizations who could control the narrative and the media. Again, remember, and I've said it many, many times, the CIA equals the mainstream media. When Trump gets out there and he's saying, UMSM, you're fake news. Why doesn't he have the courage? Well, I can understand why he doesn't. That's the CIA. We know about Operation Mockingbird. We know about NDA 2013, where the Congress said, you know, it's okay to use propaganda and lie to the American people. And then in 2014, where they funded it. Okay, let's see what else we need to do here, if anything at all. I've already talked about the proof of the two shooters beyond ears of us who are trained to hear it. Mike Adams' forensic acoustic analysis. If you haven't seen it, go to Natural News and look at it. There's also another analysis that's just been put up. I think I saw it on InfoWars. I'm not sure where I saw it, but there's another person, another scientific group that's also put up a similar thing to Mike Adams, and both are very good. We've already talked about the helicopter. I don't think that's it. A lot of the pranks, a lot of the calls to the police department, they could have been planned as diversions or just people being upset and not knowing, you know, how to react. But the planners of this entire operation knew that those types of things were going to happen and would add confusion to the mix. Do you see that? Okay. I focused also on Sheriff Lombardo's failure in reacting to this active shooter situation in a totally incorrect manner. Whether he froze up and didn't know what to do, or he was told not to, and I'm kind of believing that one because I know what his training was. I think he's been manipulated and controlled even before this thing got started. Whether he knew it or not, then I don't know. But he should know it by now. He should know it. It's all there laid out before him. And he needs to read those things that I told you about. Okay. I've talked a lot now. It's been an hour, almost an hour and a half, and I said I was going to take some questions, and I'm sorry I've ignored those up to this point in time, but I wanted to make sure I got that information out. It's going to be very interesting to see what some of my friends out there think, especially about this financial thing, because I think it is critical. It gets down to the dollar situation and everything that's going on. Okay, I'm looking. Let's see. Go ahead and ask a question. Again, like I said in an earlier video, I can probably address your questions. I don't know if I can answer them, but let's see what we can do. Are you scared about what you say? No, I'm 64 years old. You know, hey, my life has been in danger many, many times. I've got many kids. I have many people I love, and you know, it gets to the point where you have to do something for their benefit. You have to do something to make sure that they'll be okay. I might fail, you know, they're probably still going to suffer. But, you know, it just gets to the point. But you know, let me tell you a story, okay? Safety in numbers. Let me tell you a story, okay? This will kind of help you to see where I am. I had been in the Army for 4 years, and a lot of stuff had happened there, okay? I won't go into all that. But I got out of the Army from active duty, and I went to work for a police department. Most of you probably know as Murray Police Department. And interesting story here. So it was like I had been on the department for maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. It wasn't very long. And there was a bar fight. And we get to the bar fight, and there were probably 5 units that arrived there. And the sergeant on duty and like 2 or 3 officers went inside. I stayed on the outside to secure the outside, along with one other officer who became a very good friend of mine. Anyway, this guy walks out of the bar. And I'm thinking, why is he just walking out? Aren't they checking this guy? And he comes out, and he gets to a car, and he opens the trunk, and he pulls out what looks like, you know, it's a bar. They have pool tables. I thought it was a Acoustic case. He doesn't go back in the front door. He goes down the side of the bar, okay? There's a back door back there. And I go, oh, this doesn't look good. So I slipped over to the side of the building, and I'm looking down, and as I look down, he's uncasing a rifle. That's what this thing is. This is a rifle. He's going to go kill some people. Well, here we go with Lombardo again, okay? I didn't even call for help. I just yelled, well, I did, but not over the radio type thing. I yelled at my buddy who was still back a little ways from me. I said, gun! And I ran, and I tackled this guy, full tackle, and we went down. And, you know, we're struggling on the ground. I finally got the rifle away from him. I'm not telling you this story. Well, I am telling you because this is what police officers should be able to do, okay, including Lombardo. You don't want to put your people in danger. You know, Robert E. Lee said that, yeah, I'm going to talk about a Confederate general, Robert E. Lee, and Pickett and Longstreet. You know, how beautiful it is to see the Army out there and all of its banners and its standards and its information. It's a beautiful thing to see. And the hardest thing for a commander is to order its death. So I understand Lombardo from that point. But you're wearing a badge and a gun. You took an oath. And your line officers were willing to do it and you weren't. So anyway, we struggled on the ground for a while. I finally got the gun from him, and the other officers came and, you know, helped me to take care of him. While I'm standing by the car, we've arrested the guy, of course. He was going in to kill his wife and a few other people. And that's what the fight was all about. And so, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm hyped up on adrenaline, of course. And my buddy walks over and he says, man, he says, you really hit that guy hard. And I said, well, I didn't have any chance. I just had to do it. And he says, well, have you looked at your arm? I was wearing a very lightweight jacket. And I said, well, what do you mean? And I looked at it and I had torn there was broken glass all over the place in the back. And I had sliced my elbows on both arms, on my belly and some other places. And I was bleeding like crazy. I had to go to the hospital and get stitches. The point is, if you're really going to take that badge and gun seriously, that oath that you take, all right, and that's just one example. There, I could tell you some more stories, but that's kind of an interesting one. You know, you have to take chances when you've taken that oath, and that's the point. You try to tactically do it so that, you know, you minimize casualties, you minimize injuries to your own people, but you got to act. And Sheriff Lombardo either froze up or he failed to act. Time was of the essence. They should have been in that building. They should have, whatever it took. And those line officers knew it, and they were after it. Who held Lombardo back? And there was a reason for that, so the people could get away. The real people got away. Okay, I keep talking. All right, any other questions here? I'm sorry I got off on that, but are you on Periscope? I am. It's and I put up Periscope every once in a while. I put one up, I think yesterday. Not often. Well, actually, I'm using it more. I am. Yeah, so Periscope and Twitter. Yeah, our military is terribly infiltrated. You saw that with this lieutenant at the USMA. And I will tell you that our service schools have been disasters for years. I went through the Command and General Staff College in 1991, 90 and 91. And what happened there, what I could tell you about is disgusting. Even in that period of time, the changeover was already occurring. Actually, it started in the 80s, actually in the 70s. But right now, our military is in trouble. And people like Matt Bracken and Craig Sawyer will tell you that. You have a laugh or you'll cry. How did you know, Barry? Our own government's killing our people so that they can establish tyranny, power, control, and they worship the AI as God. I put up a video about that a few days ago. You can look back and see it. Yeah. So why do I do this? Yeah, that's why. Okay, any good questions here that we need to do? Please run for Senate. No, I ran for sheriff in 1986 in Salt Lake County. I did pretty well, but I'll never be elected to office. I'm too controversial. I'm a Christian, but I'm not what you would consider a traditional Christian. It'd be really hard to explain to you why, but let's see. Will you please follow me back on Twitter? I'm sorry, I missed who that was. I missed it. I'm sorry. Okay, what can we do to help? Exposure. You know, the scriptures talk about, and Brand was the one who mentioned this actually. He said, you know, be watchmen on the tower. Watch. Be aware. You know, don't walk around with your head in the clouds not knowing what's going on or buried in the sand. Be aware. Being aware is is almost as important as being out there and doing something, because that does influence God's actions with us. And we yeah, Tom Martin, you figured it out. Okay. Our awareness does make a difference, because consciousness is instantaneous. Everybody that's linked in with us, you've heard about the stories about the monkeys. You know, they go down and one of them learns how to eat something and then all the other ones figure it out. It's the same kind of thing. All right. Prayer is instantaneous. It doesn't travel 186,000 miles per second rather, across the universe. When you think a thought, it's to the farthest reaches of the universe at the same time, because we're connected. It's at the quantum level. Okay. All right. Okay. Cosmo Sherry. Okay. When you ask, I will. Now let me tell you about why I don't follow people on Twitter. Just as a matter of course. There are certain people I do because I want information. I'm very much into intelligence gathering, information, you know, checking things out. I don't mean to be rude when somebody follows me and I don't follow back. It's just that I can't handle that much. It's why I didn't go on Facebook, okay? I'm there to help you understand in the long run. And so if I follow everybody, then I'm getting hit with too much information. It's sort of like the NSA. You know, they do that mega data traps, right? Or gathering. And even William Binney said they get so much information that they miss an event when it's about ready to happen. So I don't want to get to that point. But when you ask me to, I'll definitely try. Okay, I'll try to remember. LaRouche, he's got some good stuff. Everybody does, but you have to be careful of anybody who's been in any kind of an intel position, even myself. That's why I'm very, very open about things. Why 23 guns in the shooter's room? It was part of the scenario because a lot of Second Amendment people have a big collection. And so they can say, hey, you only need one gun. You don't need all this. It's okay. As a matter of fact, I saw a thing come out about that. You only need 2 guns, maybe a handgun or a handgun, and then maybe a rifle and a shotgun. And of course, it's just a way to whittle it down. That's one thing. Another possibility is very likely could have been a weapons deal, or somebody, you know, thinking it was. But a sniper, a guy who's planning on killing a bunch of people, doesn't need all those weapons. And the argument that the weapons would overheat or jam or whatever, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. Not 23, not even 10. I could see a guy maybe having 3 or 4 because of the type of the configuration of these things. Not that many. Ammunition's more important than the weapons themselves. Okay. Yeah, no bird carpet. And like I said, I don't even know about that picture. I'm not sure that that's really for sure. Insecure females, I missed that. Let's see. Yeah, all of that, everything that's happening now is going to be, especially with the FBI, is going to be straw man, is going to be diversions. Making you think that they're actually doing something when they're not. Let me give you a good example of that, the Boston bombing. I did a Boston bombing review analysis back in 2013. It really got the intel community upset at me. I started having a lot of problems with those guys after that. But this was a situation where, if you remember, here's the point. Okay, first of all, that was a war between agencies. It's part of the deal where the CIA was infiltrating the FBI and some other stuff was going on. And you can see that. The eldest brother of the Zarnov brothers, the oldest one, he was never at the final finish line. He was never there. And they could never prove it. They never had it. With all the cameras that were there, they could never find it. Okay. And then the other picture of the younger brother may have been Photoshopped, but that's another story. What I want to get to is this, that you remember they were trying to figure out who did it, and there were a whole bunch of things that were going on, and then they found that video. They supposedly found it, right, of the Zarnov brothers walking by. I think it was a clothing store, you know, something like that. And they got them on the sidewalk on the camera. And what did the agent in charge say? Gee, public, will you help us find out who this is? Please help us find out who it is. The FBI already knew. So did the CIA. They already knew who it was. You see how they do that? So everything is, from this point forward, nothing's going to be resolved to the public. to their satisfaction, real satisfaction. They'll be given a story. Oh, we caught the perpetrator. He's dead. The single-shot gunman, right? Like, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald, you know, nobody can talk to him now and find out what was really going on. This was all well thought out. This was planned probably for months. Okay, yeah, they're working on their next trick. That's right. I expect it any day, frankly, because now that they've got this thing going, you know, we've got the coup against Trump is ongoing November 4th, of course, as somebody just said, Beth, and I'll talk about November 4th in just a minute, because it's ongoing. We're seeing the American Red October occurring right now, and all of this is part of it. You know, the riots, the shooting in Vegas, whatever other false flags are going to run, or real incidents with patsies or with ISIS or La Raza, or people say La Raza. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to argue with you about it. The Zetas, you know, who knows? There could be all kinds of stuff here. Black Lives Matter, whatever. A lot of crazy things are going to happen, and they're going to be cultivated by the FBI and the CIA and the OFA. You know, Obama's deal, right? Okay. So at any rate, maybe I got off topic there. Yeah, the November 4th thing. So it's ongoing. The coup against Trump. You know, I'm still not, to be honest with you, I'm not sure where Trump is. You know, I'm sorry, but again, I mean, he's doing a lot of good things, but the swamp isn't getting drained. And we see this thing happening here. People at the FBI should be fired right now. Right now. Rouse should be fired. But he won't be. Jeff Sessions isn't going after Hillary, and I consider that a canary in the coal mine. You know, and I could go on and on. Without draining the swamp, we'll never fix the government. It can't be done. Yes, it'll embarrass the government, the pedophilia thing, all of that. The Iwan brothers that George Webb is looking into, that shows how they've, you know, gotten in bed with all these foreign governments. Pay for play. All of this. You've been sold out, Americans. You've been sold out. Even though Trump is trying to stop it, they're still bringing Islamic people in. You know, not as many Christians. It's an invasion. If anybody's read the Quran or the Hadith or any of those things, you'll understand this is an invasion. The rhetoric that Trump says, as I've said many, many times, it is not manifest on the ground. Not to the, yeah, these things take time. I understand that. Okay, I understand that. But like Lombardo attacking that gunman or gunmen in the Mandalay Bay, that's the criticality. That's the time element. That's the urgency that needs to be done to clean out the government. And when McMaster came in, I mean, there are other things that happened before that. When McMaster came in, I just went, great. This isn't good. And it's proven not to be, right? We're still there. So Trump might be having some problems, of course, trying to command all this. But then he has to speak up. What, he's gonna make the American people lose faith in the government, that it can operate? Didn't you lose faith a long time ago? So what is there to lose? Let's call this for what it is. We've been infiltrated. That people that have taken the oath under deceit, the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, they did it under deceit, like this Army officer at the USMA. And we need to get rid of these people. They're out of here. Nobody has the courage. Not even Trump. And that's wrong. It's wrong, because you'll never fix the problems in the government. I would rather entire agencies disappear and everything just go to hell as far as all these regulations and laws and all that, than to leave these people in power, because they're going to destroy us anyway. Knock it all down, rebuild it back up the way it should be. Are bad people going to still slip in there? Certainly. But we let our guard down, ladies and gentlemen. Let our guard down. No one has any guts or backbone. Boy, tell me about that. I'll tell you. Let me tell you another story about the corruption in government that I witnessed myself. Okay. What about November 4th? Okay, let me get back on that real quick, and then remind me to talk about the corruption at Twill Army Depot. So, And I could talk about the corruption in the Corps of Engineers too, but we'll talk about that one maybe some other time, how it comes into play with all this. So November 4th, if their threats are for real, I don't know, if this is actually, if they're actually going to go, but I think they will. From everything I've heard with the people with money and how they're pushing it, Soros, all the intelligence that we've gathered and all that, they want to have a countrywide, basically, riot, killing, like the Bolshevik Revolution. They go after the good judges, the good cops, the good military. Then they start killing the little people, just like Stalin did in the purges. That happened later, but it also happened at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. This thing could go crazy. Then what will happen? Well, the military will be called outright, and you can't trust anybody in the military. I mean, half the military is probably good, but any general, any officer 06 or above who survived the Obama purges is suspect, and I've said that for a long time. So we're looking at some bad things. Get your provisions, your water, your food, whatever else. Make sure you have some good people you can depend upon. People think we are all crying wolf. Well, that's fine, but the history is on our side there, Douglas. They are, aren't they? I mean, history's on our side. We're 200 years old. We're over 200 years old, okay? And democracies historically head downhill into a fascist state, a tyranny state. And we're well on our way. And Obama wasn't the one that started it, but he helped it along more than anybody else. It started a long time ago. I didn't like Bush, either one, for lots of reasons, as most people probably know now. Okay, so let me tell you about, in the Tooele Army Depot, about this thing about embarrassing the government. And I think I maybe said it once before. There was a bomb hoax, but we didn't know it was a hoax at first. So I was called. I was out there. By the way, Tooele at the time was the world's largest chemical weapons storage depot. It also had conventional weapons, but the south area was where all the chemical weapons were, and there were more there than all the rest of the world. They built a place called the CAMDIS facility, as Chemical Agent Munitions Disposal System, which I had a part in, to start getting rid of the inventory, especially the older stuff. Well, there was a construction project in the south area to upgrade the igloos where the weapons were kept with what they call JSIDs. Those are intrusion detection systems, and upgrades, strengthening the structures, things like that. It was a multi-million-dollar construction project. Well, so I'm in my office and I get a call from the desk sergeant. He says, "Hey, Lieutenant, we just found a bomb on one of the igloos in the south area, in one of the areas." So I head down there and I met the lieutenant of the civilian police force that we had. I think we had 200, maybe more, civilian police officers, and I was like the chief of police. There was a civilian chief of police, but I was like the military controller. The provost marshal is what they call him. So I got down there and I could see, I'd been an electrician. I'm looking at this bomb and this doesn't look real. So I said, I got a hunch. So I went up to the place where they'd shut down the whole depot, so there's no construction taking place. This all started about 7:30 in the morning, and it's now about like 8:30, something like that. I get up to the foreman for the construction company, and I say, "Hey, do you know anything about this?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm afraid I do." And he called over the electrical foreman, who then called over this other guy. And I said, "Well, what do you know about this?" And he says, "Well, yeah, I did it." And I said, "Stop." So we read him his rights and all that, and then I said, "Do you want to talk to us?" And he says, "Yeah, okay." What he had done was he wanted to pull a joke on a security officer, one of the civilian police officers, federal police, and say he was going to blow up the igloo as this guy drove by. Well, the guy could have filled him full of holes like Swiss cheese and been totally justified, so it was really stupid. But the whole point of the story is this. So I go down, I double check, I have the foreman with me. Yeah, this is all phony. We gather all the stuff as that it was duct seal, a 9-volt battery, and some wires. It was really obviously not what it appeared to be by the uninitiated. And I called up to the EOC, the Brigadier General, and I said, "It's all a hoax. We've arrested the perpetrator. Everything's okay. We can shut this all down, let everybody come back to work." Now, I'm a first lieutenant at the time. Do you know what he tells me to do? He says, "Put the bomb back on the door. We're going to play this to the hilt." So now we're going to keep the whole area shut down for an exercise that started out as a real deal. The whole EOC is activated. You know, we've got the EOD team coming from Fort Douglas. The FBI's on their way. I mean, this thing's out of control, right? I couldn't believe it. So I drive up to the EOC and I try to talk to the commander. He won't talk to me. He's in there with his boss from DARCOM, was the name of the command at the time, who was a major general. So I go to the staff PM, the staff provost marshal, and I say, he was a full colonel. He was over all the whole depot complex. The Tooele Army Depot Complex was like, at the time, 5 or 6 or 7 other depots, not just Tooele. I was just at Tooele. And I went to the colonel and said, what's going on here? And he says, I don't know, but they're going to go all the way with it. And I said, I don't want anything to do with this. And I went back to my job. Well, as you can tell, you know, the whole thing went for the whole day. Nobody went back to work. And then the government, this commander, tried to sue the contractor for the whole day when he knew by 9 o'clock in the morning that everybody could go back to work. But they kept the shutdown, and then they went after the contractor for all this money. Well, I got called into court as a witness, right, by the defense. Think where my career went after this? Against the brigadier general? I give my testimony, and they interrupt me during the testimony. And what does the judge tell me, who's a federal judge? Lieutenant, do not embarrass the government. We do not want to embarrass the government. That was his excuse for not wanting me to testify to the truth. And he said it in open court. So this is what I'm telling you. Let's embarrass the government. Let's embarrass them. Lombardo embarrassed the government. FBI agents who are decent embarrass the government. Jeff Sessions, get the hell out of the way. You become the problem, not the solution. Yeah, I'll skip some of these questions. Let's see what else we have. Anybody have a specific question about what we've talked about tonight? I've kept you for almost 2 hours and I feel bad. What would happen if our military say no and stay down to depart into any foreign country? We're already, you know, most of our good fighting forces are already deployed. If something happens in this country, we're on our own, folks. Northcom cannot be depended upon. The entire thing that Southcom, the JSOC ran, the Jade Helm deal, which was spatial intelligence, that was to locate all the potential targets for the intelligence community, the people that won't go along. You know, I talked about that at the time, but I got attacked by a lot of special forces people saying, oh, we'd never do that. Maybe you wouldn't, but the information is going to be used against the American people. Okay? It is. That's what it's all about. I might as well tell you about this. I was one of the first officers to go through the, and I've talked about this before to some extent, to go through the Army's Terrorism Counteraction School. This was back in '88. And, you know, all of us were thinking at the time that this is about, you know, the guys who did like the Munich massacre of the Israeli athletes. You know, we're all thinking that kind of a terrorist. Like, you know, it's been a long time ago. A lot of this has been declassified. You can go find it out on your own. But I'm sitting in this class, and we're learning. There's a difference between counteraction, terrorism counteraction, and terrorism, anti-terrorism. Anti-terrorism are the things that you do, you know, propaganda, teaching people, you know, trying to make possible areas that can have terrorism to, you know, to develop, you know, food, jobs, whatever. All the things you do to try to prevent terrorism. Terrorism counteraction is the actual tactical response, okay? That's the school I'm in. I mean, we learn about anti-terrorism, but the real purpose of the school is how to counter terrorists in tactical situations. I was appalled to find out what the definition of terrorism is. And it's not what you would think. There are, at the time, there were a dozen or more definitions of terrorism. And that has now expanded out to so many things that were never meant to be considered terrorism. and I think you know what I mean. But I'll give you an example, okay? A little altered, but you'll get the idea. One of the definitions of terrorism was, by definition, and this is why I'm so much against all of the terrorism, counter-surveillance and all that, because of how they can misuse this. A terrorist, one of the definitions, one, you have 2 weeks supply of food available to you. What farmer doesn't have that? You have a means of making money without a W-2. In other words, you own your own business. You have a firearm. Meeting those 3 criteria, you are by definition a terrorist. Wow. And that's not the only one. Your government is your enemy. The intelligence communities are your enemy. They are the bankers, the lawyers, the Wall Street bankers and lawyers, the same people that Jesus beat in the temple for what they were doing to the people. Same group of people. Okay? All right. Anything else here? Anybody got a public health nurse? Yeah, you probably are. You saw what they did to the nurse in Salt Lake City, right? He was trying to protect a person who was unconscious and they wanted to take blood from him. It was actually to hide the wrongdoing of one of their other people. But yeah, interesting, huh? That nurse is going to hopefully own the hospital. I'm sorry, own the city. Are all Mossad bad? No. And that's, you got to understand, this is a hierarchical structure. Most of the guys on the bottom, I mean, they can get encouraged to come along after a while, but it's really the people in the upper 3 tiers or so. That's really the problem. It's not that they don't find people in those lower tiers that they can then cultivate to become like them. Yeah, sure, that happens. But not everybody's bad. No, they're not. As a matter of fact, if that were the case, they could never get, oh, okay, hi, Doug. They could never get their work done. They need to have the grunts, who think that they're doing the right thing even if they're not. They have to be convinced that they are. It's sort of like Alex Jones said, and I know a lot of people have a problem with Alex Jones. I do too. His staff is great, but and he brought this out, and it's very true that. This thing with calling Trump, a Russian, that he's bad for the country and all this thing, isn't really for the American people. It's for the operatives in these lower tiers who think now if they go through with an assassination or whatever, that they're doing it for the country. You see how they operate that? So they got to have people that think they're doing it for the right reason. They have to have those guys and girls, unfortunately. But eventually, if they find the right person that they can cultivate, they'll bring them into their society. And the whole thing with pedophilia, of course, is to keep them quiet. And that's why they're fighting back so much now with all these things that are happening. Vegas, the wars. I talked a little bit about the fires. Pam Jones, Pam Jones for Liberty, has done a lot of great work on that, and the chemical spraying from the planes. The accelerant on the ground, which is most likely aluminum-based from the spraying, which causes the fires to be more intense. The possibility of directed energy weapons, at the very least, electromagnetic frequency weapons. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Don't forget, like I said the other day, nuclear technology is over a century old. They're far beyond that now, far beyond that. Okay, any other questions here? It's been 2 hours as of right now. I've really worn everybody out. Abortion is murder. Yes, I agree. Were any shots fired from the 32nd floor? I don't know that we can prove that. The angle of the shots. Brand might actually know more about that than I do. They think that his nephew was shot by somebody on the ground. Again, not necessarily inside the festival, but immediately outside of it, at a lower angle, which would make sense. You have somebody firing from above and somebody firing from another direction. And I don't know exactly where that would be, but yeah, very, very possible. Yeah. Okay. Anything else here? Well, thank you. Well, I just wanted to get some of this out. It's going to be real interesting how they play into this and how they play us. I just hope Lombardo just has a come to Jesus moment and decides to stand up for the right thing. He looks horrible. They've really beat him up psychologically. I think he is scared. I think he is. Frankly, I kind of like the guy. I just want him to stand up. I just want him to stand up. Tell him to get out of there. Tell the feds to just leave. And then the governor of the state needs to support him in that, Sandoval. I think he's still the governor. All right. Any other questions? I didn't mean to ignore anybody as I was trying to get all that information out. What do you think the tannerite was in the shooter's vehicle? Well, you know, at this point, who do we even know who the shooter was? Supposedly this Paddock guy who's now dead, or is the real Paddock on a Caribbean island somewhere with a new identity? You know, I don't know. But the guy laying on the floor in the hotel room is not the guy we were shown in the pictures holding the glass. It's not the same guy. So I'm not certain. What was that? That most handsome podcast. I'll get out of here. Okay. Yeah, the FBI. Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, yeah. The FBI is the main suspect. I got it. In conjunction with the CIA. They're really the same these days. There's really no difference. They make it look different where they're not. Look what Mueller did. Mueller was responsible for bringing the CIA into the FBI. That was his whole idea. Mueller's a criminal traitor bastard. So is Comey. So is McCabe. Yeah, that's another example. Yeah, just a lot of things about that body on the floor that don't make sense. Okay, Branthorne says 19-degree angle opposed to a 30-degree angle. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, could it have been a ricochet? Brand has answered that on some of his videos, which I'm going to include in the description box down here. A ricochet will make a different type of an entry wound, and I think Brand will agree with me on this. And he says that it was not that type of an entry wound. It'll spin, it'll tumble, it'll do something like that. And apparently that's not what happened. It was a clean entry wound. Yeah, Guandalo's a great guy. Yeah, I have a lot. I don't think he's a plant. I don't think he's one of those guys that's supposed to lead us down another road. But anytime you're dealing with secure intelligence people, let me tell you this. You know, I kind of waver back and forth with Pachinik, for instance. Steele is another question. Guandola, even though he was an FBI agent, you got to be careful of spies. People have been spies, and especially somebody like Pachinik, who's also a psychiatrist. You know, they have a different mindset. You know, how many times has Pachinik said, oh, the generals are bad that are with Trump. Oh, they're good. Oh, they're bad. Oh, they're good. Oh, they did good on Syria. Oh, they did bad on this. And now he's saying that they're all traitors. You know, I agree. I'm not certain Trump is. Trump is just, he's out of his element, you know. I still hold him accountable, but I don't think he's a traitor. I pray not. DHS needs to bring in TSA scanners to everywhere. Oh yeah, for sure. And again, it's the money thing. Not just you get money to Chertoff and all these guys with making that like they did after 9/11, but also the whole deal with William was facing east, the hotel. Yeah, all those people who want to know about Brand's nephew that was shot, go to his YouTube channel. It's Brand Thornton. Or you can just Google him. You got a lot of information on him. He's been kind of active. And yeah, Rouse, yeah, bad dude. And you can hear his explanation there. Okay, and he's not the only one. There are other people, of course. Is Putin against the New World Order? Man, you know, that's another subject, Liberty for All. I'd love to get into that, but man, that's another whole rabbit hole. Let's kind of stick on Vegas as much as we can. More land grabs. Yeah, they're coming. They're coming. Trump needs to sign away those things that Obama did, but unless he gets that swamp cleaned out, you know, he just needs to do it and then to fight him later. I mean, he's already got a big target on his back and on his chest. He might as well just go full bore. Just call it what it is and go do it. But, you know, I'm not him. You know, I'm not Lombardo. But I've been there where I see the type of pressure that they put on people. I could tell you some stories. We're not going to go there tonight. Probably never, actually. Okay. Okay, Putin is against New World Order. Maryland thinks so. And you're probably right, actually. You're probably right. Yeah, the pyramid, all the stuff that's been going on with the NFL, you know, all the Luciferian things, all that, pedophilia, all that's mixed in, folks. The intelligence agencies, pedophilia, Luciferianism, the New World Order, globalization, it's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's just different parts of the octopus's legs, different legs of the octopus. Okay, trust in Jesus, yes. Yeah, that's about the only one you can right now. Never run out of ass cheeks. Benny. Good grief. All right. Anything else? Russia has a cardboard government. Okay. Anything more on Las Vegas? Because I've kept you for over 2 hours. I just want to see if there's anything else here that anybody needs to know about Las Vegas that I haven't covered. But I've had 2 weeks of data in my head. Okay, 2 weeks of data. I haven't slept some nights, you know, and I think of all those poor people that were there enjoying themselves and their families and their loved ones just before that horrible thing was done to them. Don't ever forgive the FBI for this, ever. Or the CIA. Don't ever trust them, no matter what they say. Remember they killed the friend of Zarnov in Florida? You know, the guy that supposedly, no, I forget his name right now. It's Teglev or something like that. They went down there supposedly interrogating him. Now, I've done interrogations before, interviews and interrogations, and they say this guy threatened them with deadly force and they shot him in the head. Really? No, that was a hit. And nobody got called into question. They put up a little thing about a review by the FBI. Yeah. Fox watching the hen house. Yeah. Softly, what was wrong with Roy? Oh, you mean my sickness? I don't really want to talk about it. Let's just say it wasn't a disease. It wasn't a virus. I ingested, I don't think it was an accident. I ingested something that basically poisoned me and messed up my innards. Notice I haven't had to take a break. That's a good thing, actually. I won't comment any more on that. Okay, Barry. You know, there are so many. We're in that time of the world where everything is a deception, everything is a deceit, everything is a lie, everything is to take control of your soul, not to let you be free, no matter where it comes from. And everybody has an ulterior motive. Trump's orb is a direct link to Satan himself. Yeah, I'm not. It could be. You know, I'm on the fence with Trump right now. You know, the wars, the Syria attack with the missiles, believing all that crap about Assad having used chemical weapons on his people. That's all horse shit. It's all horse shit. So I don't know. North Korea is our fault, of course. We've caused this thing in the long run. Of course, Clinton giving them all the weapons and stuff, you know. You never really hear, you know, Trump talking about that, do you? North Korea is a problem. I called that a long time ago. You know, Christopher Green and I were talking about EMP 5 years ago, and people were laughing at us. They can't do that. And just like Christopher Green said the other day, he's with AMTV, and he said, you know, we were talking about this EMP thing, and 4 or 5 years ago, and everybody's saying no, they can't do that. Now they say they have, more than likely. And the other thing was, just 5-6 months ago, they were saying there was no way that they could shrink a nuclear weapon down, especially not a hydrogen a fusion weapon, down to size enough to fire it on its missiles. No way they can do that. They're years away from it. Here we are 5-6 months later, and now they're warning us. Oh, yeah, they can do it. What's the truth of the matter? You know, it's all to come at us. That's what it's all about. It's all about subduing the American people. Just like Soros said, they can't succeed if the American people are intact. And when you see this attack on November 4th, when you see the attack by the DNC, when you see the attack by the left on Trump, he's just the figurehead. Who are they really after, ladies and gentlemen? I'll leave it to you. He's the figurehead. Who are they really after? The American people, who have even a smidgen of the understanding of liberty, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights left in their heart. Thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate you all being here. I'm going to let you go. I don't know when my next transmission will be. I'll probably get back to doing video uploads for a lot of reasons. I hope the picture was okay and the audio tonight. My modem is not the best. And actually, when I'm on the screen here, I can't even see if it's functioning properly, but I'm hoping that it is. God bless you all. Pray unceasingly. Don't worship personalities. Worship God, who is the author of principle, of good principle. So we don't worship people. We don't worship personalities. We don't want to be guilty of leaderitis. That's what I call it. It's from an old thing back from my past. Other people that have used that, but it fits. Align yourself with principle and maintain that at all costs. God bless you. Good night. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.